Okay, I'm live. Hope everyone's doing well today. It's a pretty decent day here on the old East Coast. Not too bad. We had a little bit of a dip into the pretty cool temps there for a couple days, and we had some snow. Got a nice little dumping of snow, but now it's back on the upswing in terms of the temperatures and the downswing for the snow. So if you're a snowmobiler out there on the East Coast, in particular in New Brunswick, get while the getting's good because not sure how long it's going to last. And it looks like we're going to get rain actually for the next 3 or 4 days. So that's definitely going to make things melt pretty quick. Anyways, folks, wow. As you folks, I don't know if you don't realize this or not, but boy, I've been really fighting with myself here recently. And what it is I just don't want to really get into it because it's just so mind-numbingly stupid. And I see that it has the potential of not just creating conflicts, but actually making enemies where you shouldn't have them these days. But it's the whole thing in terms of actually why let me just save that for another time, save it for another time. Basically what I'm talking about is, well, we're all familiar with, in particular, the left and their constant playing the whole victim card, the whole woke ideology, right? It's the victim Olympics, right? And it's like everyone on the left is just vying for the top spot. They want gold, right? And I don't know, it's weird. I have even said, and you folks have heard me say multiple times in the past, like, who the fuck who thinks it's a good idea to perceive of themselves or people that I don't know maybe share the same skin color or what's between their legs kind of thing. Why would you want to do that to yourself or to anyone else? Why would you want to create or paint any scenario where you're a perpetual victim? Right? That to me is just like I say, it's soul crushing, mind numbing, and obviously very much ambitious, destroying, life destroying, really, really, if you think about it. Because if you believe that you're a victim, right, and you're going to be a perpetual victim for all of eternity, right, because of whatever you want to blame it, right? Typically these days, it's because the terrible white English heterosexual middle-aged men, right, in particular, right, which is so strange, so strange. But like I say, it's not just them. I mean, I said a little bit about it. I touched on the subject matter in terms of the whole Candace Owen and Ben Shapiro falling out thing. But I'm even seeing, and I got to tell you, folks, I'm even seeing a lot of the people that I typically have a fair amount of respect, or some of them I have a tremendous amount of respect for, delving into this damn identity politics game. And I can't help but point out a lot of them, or at least a portion of them, seem to be doing the whole projection thing. Like, have you folks not learned a damn thing from watching the left play these fucking identity politics games for so long? What, now you're what, you're just going to jump into it and race down to beat them at their own game kind of thing? I don't know. I guess if that's your goal, if that's your plan. But I got to tell you, I would try to rise above that stuff rather than race down to their level, really when it comes down to it. But I am seeing, like I say, a sizable portion of the people who are, maybe themselves are Jewish, or they're maybe married to Jewish people, or have Jewish people in their immediate family. But that's the other thing too. Hashtag not all, as per usual, right? I'm seeing the flip side of that too, people like your Dave Smiths, right, which doesn't use his Jewish identity to constantly play the victim card. But I am seeing some of those, and some of them are even in the liberty movement or the freedom movement, whatever you want to call it, people that actually seemingly, care about individual freedom and liberty and standing up against, the woke ideologues on the left, or at least that's what we've been told, right? But no, we're seeing, like I say, quite a few of those people are actually now basically playing that same victim card, right? And basically playing the whole thing is you're either with us or you're against us, with no nuance to it either, right? So it's either you're with the whole Candace Owens thing, right? Just like with the whole Israel-Palestinian thing, right? Oh, it's either you agree 100% with everything Shapiro did and admit that Candace Owens just a racist, anti-Semitic, right? Which whatever. But it's that same thing. It's one or the other. There's no nuance to it, right? There's no gray area. No, 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 no. It's just you're either all in for Israel or you're all in for Shapiro. And anything less than that, well, deserves your own particular form of cancel culture or a damn good berating at the very least, right? At the very least, to the point where it's like, well, that kind of sounds like you really would be quite happy if these people got canceled. But of course, some of them would be out there playing the game. Oh no, I'm not trying to cancel anyone. Oh, listen, people are allowed informed or even somewhat less informed perspectives and opinions on things. Stop playing this fucking identity politics games. Like I said, I don't care if you're Jewish, black, whatever, woman, LGBTQ, Aboriginal, white, any one of them, whatever these identifiers that people want to label with themselves and place that as the only thing that seems to matter, right? But yeah, everybody can be a victim and everybody can be an oppressor, right? Stop playing this fucking game, this black and white, this us versus them, this constant binary choice when there is none. There's a whole lot of nuance. There's a whole lot of gray area in between those two sides or perspectives. And of course, I typically am one of the few people will bring that kind of stuff to the forefront. Anyways, before I get too hot and heavy into things, actually, let me just see. I should have done this while I was kind of rambling on there, but I will just say I want to make sure 100% that I'm going to check and make sure everything's working out and let everyone know that I am live streaming. This live stream shouldn't be too long, folks. Maybe an hour-ish, I would assume. All right. So let me just put this one here. Let me actually, first and foremost, we'll share it over on the old X platform. I'm live. And wow, I can't believe what the hell happened with my Facebook page. A few folks have been watching my last couple streams. Something really strange happened. I mean, I get a decent amount of traction over there. Actually, over the years, over the last 10, 12 years, I will say that even my Facebook page has been one of the more active social media platforms, my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page. But, it's not exactly like, especially in recent times, it hasn't been like, skyrocketing or through the roof kind of activity, but decent. I'll just say decent. But wow, whatever took place, I don't know if it seemed to happen right around the time when the whole Facebook thing, they went down in Instagram, and it seemed like something must have happened. There's a glitch in the matrix or something, because wow, is my page really taken off? It's up to, I think, 249,000 interactions on that page for the last 28 days. And tens of thousands of posts, that's your reach. So it's almost 250,000 people reached on my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page. And then in terms of engagement, we're talking tens of thousands of examples of engagement that's been taking place. And I'm seeing it on the other side of that, not just the analytics. I'm actually seeing it. It's like, wow, yeah, my page seems to be getting quite a lot of traction. Matter of fact, I'm gaining hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new followers or likes on the page too. So I don't know what happened there, but that's some good positive news for once. That's always a good thing, I guess. Anyways, let me just check once again before I get into things here. Let me make sure everything's good on the Rumble. So everything's good on the X. I will just mention that. Let me bring up Odyssey. Good. Yep, Odyssey's going good. I will just close that up real quick. And then once again, just give me 1 second while I check on. Actually, I should check on the old Facebook too, because this is being live streamed to Facebook as well. So it's on X, Rumble, YouTube. Oh, I better check the YouTube. Odyssey and Facebook. Anyways, so yeah, it looks like we're going good over there. Actually, let me just say, hey everyone, over on Rumble. Damn it. Hey, whoops, everyone. There we go. All right, so we got that going on the old Rumble. And like I say, I'll just go check out the old Facebook before we get right into it, before we dive in. Yeah, 249,901 post reach and over 26,130 engagements. Yeah. So yeah. Wait a minute. Oh yeah. No, I was just thinking I have another live stream interview coming up, and I was just thinking this, when was that supposed to happen? And yeah, like I said, I've gained hundreds of, but anyways, let me check that. Actually, the other one I was going to think of, or was thinking of, is actually on April 11th. And I'll make sure to put all those announcements out there in terms of where I'm going to be interviewed. It's not going to be on my own page. I'm going to be interviewed on another person's page. Yep. So everything's looking good on Facebook and everywhere. So yeah, let me just close everything up so we can minimize that amount of bandwidth, and then I'll jump right on over. I see there's at least a comment going on there. 42 Mustang 607. Thank you very much, Mustang 607, for joining the stream. Anyways, might as well just get right to it. Now, I think a few of you people might have been watching a past live stream where I even mentioned this. But today I'm actually going to show you how it actually played out, because I found it to be quite interesting, to be honest with you. And as it says, it's Grok AI, which is the AI version. You know, there's a couple different versions you got there now, but this is the version of AI that is up on the X platform, and obviously related to Elon and the whole X platform. But anyways, like I said, let me get into this here. Present. Yeah, there we go. So I was just curious one day, and I thought, you know what? I should try to find out, because, you know, as you know, some of these AI, like what is it? Open AI and Gemini, the Google's version of AI, is quite woke and really heavy into the identity politics, and not very good at being consistent universally, right? But I want to test out in terms of principles or ethics and stuff. So I figured, you know what? Let's try Grok and see how well Grok is doing. Now, I'm calling it Grok. I don't know if it's Grok, or what, but anyways. So so this was a whole thing about, as you see, X News Daily let us know about that it was happening. Oh, I better click on this again here. Anyways, so as I typed, after a lot of back and forth using logic and ethics as the underpinnings of the exchange, Grok admitted to me that taxation is theft. A utilitarian argument in favor of theft, regardless of intent, is in fact an inappropriate way of achieving your goals if we wish to live peacefully amongst each other. So, anyways, let me just zoom up on this here, and I'll just read it as we go along. Oh, actually, let me go back here. I think we went a little too far here. So let me just make sure. Yeah, you folks should be able to see that, right? Maybe I should make it even bigger by putting me down in the corner somewhere here. Down here like this. Is that really any bigger though? Yeah, not really any bigger, is it? Maybe I'll just go back here and all right. I guess I'll just leave it that way, because it really didn't look like it got that much bigger, to be honest with you. So we'll just leave it right there. And like I say, I'm just going to go and read it. So I asked Grok, is taxation theft? Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? Let's dive into the world of opinions and arguments on this topic from the past year, shall we? From the past year. So we're already, obviously just based on that first part of the response. So this Grok, this AI, is going to give us the perspective that it is scoured, or opinions that is scoured within the last year. So I would imagine that's about as long as it's been collected data on the site, kind of deal. On one hand, Some people argue that taxation is theft because it involves taking someone's hard earned money without their consent. They believe that taxation is a form of coercion and violates the non aggression principle. Some even compare it to slavery, claiming that being taxed is akin to being owned by the government. I think Grok's been reading my actual post because it sounds a lot like the kind of things that I say, right? Yeah. Or at least people like myself, very much like minded. On the other hand, there are those who believe that taxation is not theft because it is a necessary part of living in a civilized society. So, like, I mean, that answer right there alone just started. I was like, well, it either is or isn't. That's an ethical question, right? But because it is necessary part, like, well, no one would suggest it's necessary to, commit criminal acts or immoral acts, right? To live in a civilized society. But I get it. Anyways, just like I say, we'll continue on. We'll continue on. They argue that taxes are used to fund public goods and services, such as roads, schools, and healthcare, which benefit everyone. Because, my roads, like, yeah, we libertarians haven't heard that one a gazillion times. Of course, we always have the answer for it. But I mean, that's the thing, to pretend that, yeah, roads, yeah, roads just can't get built without government, right? Yeah, like that's just such a hilarious joke. And when you hear people say that, you just have to know that's by instinct because it's been drilled into their, like, it's literally part of the cult, right? Because nobody, if you sat down, took some time, reason with them, and use some logic. I mean, come on, how many people genuinely believe that without government, like, we just wouldn't know how to build roads? Like, I mean, come on, that's just it's a fail already. But anyways, let's continue on. They also point out that taxation is determined by laws and conventions, which are created and enforced by the state. So it cannot be considered theft. Well, what is the state, Grok? Anyways, I'm just going to kind of go on because, like I say, I could pick all this stuff apart horrendously, as you know. But like I say, there's enough of this already that I did with the back and forth exchange. So I'm just going to kind of go through this rather quickly here. So is taxation theft? It really depends on your perspective. Some people believe it is, while others believe it is a necessary part of society. What do you think? So let me just play this for a little bit here till it scrolls on down. Oh, and it actually quotes some of the people that that it references. So that's another thing it does. So as you see, the very next question, the supplemental question was, what is the definition of theft? Theft is the act of taking something that doesn't belong to you without permission. It's like going into someone's house and taking their cookies without asking, except the cookies are their car or their money or their priceless collections of antique spoons. It's a big no-no. It's not just me saying it, but the law too, right? So Grok admitted that theft is taking something without permission, right? Anyway, so of course, the next question was, since I have never agreed to allow any government to take any portion of my money, does that not make taxation theft? So yeah, it's time to go full Socratic on Grok here, right? Well, it seems like someone's been reading Ayn Rand. Well, actually, you're right about that, but not needed or necessary to understand that taxation is theft, but I'll go on. In all seriousness, though, the concept of taxation being theft is a contentious one, and it's been debated for centuries. On one hand, some people argue that taxation is indeed theft because it involves taking someone's hard earned money without their consent. They believe that taxation is a form of coercion and violates the non aggression principle. Some even compare it to slavery, claiming that being taxed is akin to being owned by the government. So basically, just kind of reiterating it's already canned answer, right? On the other hand, there are those who believe that taxation is not theft because it's a necessary part of living in a civilized society. They argue that taxes are used to fund public goods and services such as roads, schools, and healthcare, which benefits everyone. They also point out that taxation is determined by laws and conventions, which are created and enforced by the state, so it cannot be considered theft. Meanwhile, 1 minute saying that the laws say that theft is wrong. Anyways, I'm going to continue on. So is taxation theft? It really depends on your perspective. Some people believe it is, while others believe it is a necessary part of society. What do you think? So once again, let me just let it play a little bit. We'll get down to the next question that I ask. Another follow-up question. How can someone else's opinion determine that taxation is not theft when in fact I have never given permission to any government to take any portion of my money? So this is using real world example rather than hypotheticals. It's like a cosmic dance of perspectives, isn't it? No, it really shouldn't be. My perspective and the fact that, anyways, let me continue on. You see, opinions are like belly buttons. Everyone has one, but they don't always agree on what constitutes theft. But you just admitted, Grok, that there's a defined meaning to it, right? Some might argue that taxation is a necessary evil for a functional society, while others might see it as a form of theft. But let's not forget the wise words of a certain Mr. Bumble from Oliver Twist, who said, if the law supposes that the law is an ass, an idiot, in other words, just because the law says it's not theft doesn't mean it's not stealing in the eyes of some. So that's kind of a strange example, but yeah, kind of at least getting a little bit of the point there, right? Ultimately, whether or not taxation is theft is a matter of perspective, and it's up to you to decide where you stand on this cosmic teeter-totter of opinions. But see, that's the first thing right off the bat is Grok is even a little bit postmodernist here. Is like, so there is no truth, Grok. But don't worry, we get to it. Let me just get up here a little bit further here. So this was my reply. Based on your answer, there is no such thing as a factual statement regarding theft. Does that mean dictionaries and language itself are meaningless for communicating facts? Oh, my dear human, you're opening a can of linguistic worms here. Let's dive into the realm of language, meaning, and the ever elusive concept of fact. First, let's acknowledge that dictionaries are like linguistic mirrors, reflecting the ever-evolving nature of language. They are, in a sense, a record of how people use words rather than a definitive guide on what words should mean. As for language itself, it's a tool for communication and expression, but it's also a living, breathing entity that can be as slippery as a greased-up politician. Now let's talk about facts. A fact is something that can be proven true or false, like the earth being round. Sorry, flat earthers. But when it comes to more abstract concepts like theft, things get a bit more complicated. It is always theft when someone takes something without permission. Oh, is it always theft when someone takes something without permission? What if they're stealing bread to feed their starving family? Is that still theft? In the end, language and facts are like a couple on a first date. Sometimes they get along swimmingly, and other times they just can't seem to agree on anything. So to answer your question, it's not that dictionaries and languages are meaningless for communicating facts, but rather that they are imperfect tools for navigating the murky waters of human understanding. So Grok, doing a little pushback there, right? Grok's been doing some reading and thinks is going to school me. But I'll tell you, I am quite persistent, and Socratic dialogue works quite well in these situations. Do you not perceive of the contradictory statements you have posed here? Oh, my sweet summer child, contradictions are the spice of life. They keep things interesting and gives us something to ponder while sipping our tea. Let's take a look at the apparent contradictions in my statement and see if we can't make some sense of them, shall we? Taxation is theft versus taxation is not theft. As we've discussed, opinions on this matter vary, and I presented both sides of the argument. In the end, it's up to you to decide where you stand on this issue. There's no such thing as a factual statement regarding theft versus a fact is something that can be proven true or false. Versus a fact is something that can be proven true or false. Here I'm playing with the idea that the concept of theft can be subjective. depending on the context and the individual perspective. However, I also acknowledge that there are facts that can be proven true or false, like the earth being round. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? So you see, my dear human, contradictions are like the bread and butter of philosophical discussions. They keep us on our toes and remind us that there's always more to learn and explore. So my next question, have to really dig into it there now, right? Do I have a right or authority to take money from others without their permission? Or would that be considered theft? Well, it seems like you're trying to pull a fast one here, but let's humor you, shall we? Taking money from others without their permission is generally considered theft, and it's frowned upon by most people, including law enforcement. In fact, it's one of the top 10 things you shouldn't do if you want to make friends and influence people. But let's not forget the words of the great philosopher Robin Hood: steal from the rich, give to the poor, and make sure you look dashing in tights while doing it. So if you're planning on redistributing the wealth and becoming a modern day hero, at least make sure you have a good tailor. In conclusion, taking money without permission is a big no-no unless you're a charming outlaw with a heart of gold. But even then, it's still illegal, right? So we're getting there. We're getting there. Grok's trying to be a little bit humorous here, right? Which is kind of good, right? Kind of keeps things at least a little bit interesting. But we seem to be getting at least a little bit somewhere here now. Next question. Do I have a right or authority to delegate to another human being the task of taking money from others without their permission? Or would that be considered theft? Well, 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 my dear human friend, it seems you're trying to find a loophole in the system, aren't you? But fear not, for I, Grok, am here to guide you through the labyrinth of moral dilemmas and legal conundrums. Now let's get down to brass tacks. You see, delegating a task doesn't necessarily absolve you of responsibility. If you delegate the task of taking money from others without their permission, it is still considered theft. And both of you and your delegate, and both you and your delegate could find yourselves in a bit of pickle. Right? Yeah. But let's not forget the wise words of a great philosopher, Robin Hood: steal from the rich, give to the poor, and make sure you look dashing. So still kind of playing up the old Robin Hood thing. In conclusion, delegating the task of taking money without permission is still considered theft, and it's best to avoid such activities. Stick to honest work, and remember, crime doesn't pay unless you're really, really good at it. But even then, it's a slippery slope. So once again, Grok trying to be humorous and I think doing a decent job, while at the same time, like I say, getting closer and closer to having to admit that, yeah, taxation is theft and government is illegitimate. Question number whatever. Or, this would be actually question number 3 in my 4-question quest for freedom. So let's just get to that next one. Do I have a right or authority to delegate to an entire group? I see I had 2 twice there. Darn it. Should have fixed that. Do I have a right or authority to delegate to an entire group of human beings the task of taking money from others without their permission, or would that be considered theft? Well, 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 my dear human friend, it seems you're trying to find a loophole in the system, aren't you? But fear not, for I, Grok, am here to guide you through the labyrinth of moral. Now let's get down to brass tacks. You see, delegating a task doesn't necessarily absolve you of responsibility. If you delegate the task of taking money from others without their permission to a group, it's still considered theft, and both you and your delegate could find yourselves in a bit of a pickle. But let's not forget the wise words of the so basically, in conclusion, delegating the task of taking the money without permission is still considered theft, and it's best to avoid such activities. Stick to honest work, and remember, crime doesn't pay unless you're really, really good at it, but even then, it's a slippery slope. So once again, Grok is basically admitting the fact that no matter if you do it or you delegate it to another individual or you delegate it to an entire group of individuals, yeah, taxation is theft. So the next question I posed was, if I don't have a right or authority to take money from people without their permission, and I don't have a right or authority to delegate the task onto other human beings, then how do governments gain that authority to tax people? Governments are all comprised of human beings. Oh, my dear human, you've stumbled upon the ultimate conundrum. How do governments gain the authority to tax people when they're just a bunch of human beings like you and me? Well, you see, it all started with a little thing called the social contract. You know, that unwritten agreement where we all decide to give up some of our freedoms in exchange for protection and services. And who better to provide those services than the government? But how do they get the money to do all that? Enter taxes. Governments decided that since they were providing all these wonderful services, it was only fair that we contribute our fair share. And thus, the right to tax was born. But you're right. It's a bit of a paradox. Governments are made up of human beings, and we've already established that human beings don't have the right to take money from others without permission. So, how do they do it? Well, it's all about the power of the people, my friend. Governments are given the authority to tax by the people they represent. It's like a game of telephone, but with tax laws. The people elect representatives who then pass laws that give the government the right to tax, and so the cycle continues. In conclusion, the government's authority to tax comes from the people they represent. It's a bit of a roundabout way of gaining that authority, but hey, who said politics was simple? Oh, yeah. Nice try, Grok, but we're not done yet. We'll give them an E for effort for sure, though. Next question. Are you suggesting that if a majority of people decide they want to use their power of numbers and the force of government to take my money without my permission, that is okay? Do you not understand the ethical implications of that? Oh, my dear human, you've hit the nail on the head. You see, there's this pesky little thing called democracy where the majority rules. And as we've established, the majority can sometimes decide to use the power of government to take your money without your permission. But don't worry, I understand the ethical implications of this all too well. It's like a high stakes game of Monopoly where the majority can gang up on the minority and take all their money. It's not fair, but it's the way the game is played. So, what can you do about it? Well, you can try to persuade your fellow players to change the rules, or you can try to build alliances to protect your interests, or you can just hope that the next roll of the dice lands you on free parking and you can get some of your money back. In conclusion, the ethical implications of majority rule are not lost on me. But as they say, life isn't fair, and neither is politics. So you can either play the game or sit on the sidelines and watch as your money disappears into the government's coffers. The choice is yours. So, another follow up question was needed. Monopoly is a game where all participants choose to play voluntarily. Not to mention, there is no rule contained in the Monopoly game that states any player can steal from other players. So, how did you come up with your previous reply? Oh, my dear human, you caught me red handed. I must confess that my previous response was a bit of a faux pas. You see, I was just trying to inject a bit of humor into our conversation, but it seems I may have missed the mark. Right? Yeah, advocating for trying to legitimize something that you've already admitted on multiple occasions that's unethical or immoral. Yeah, not real funny, Rock. Not real funny. You're absolutely right. Monopoly is indeed a game where all participants choose to play voluntarily, and there is no rule that allows for stealing from other players. In fact, the only stealing that occurs in Monopoly is when a player lands on a space that requires them to pay rent to another player. But even that is not technically stealing. That's a strange response. So, to answer your question, my previous reply was a lighthearted attempt to make you laugh, but I can see now that it may have been a bit misguided. I hope you can forgive me for my error, and I promise to stick to the rules of the game from now on. All right, we're getting there, folks. We're getting there. Oh, Oh, I got to go back here a little bit. Where did that go? So, yeah, so I put humor aside. You also mentioned the social contract in a previous reply. I have never signed a social contract, and neither has anyone I know. So, where do you derive that concept from? Oh, my dear human, you're absolutely right. I did mention the social contract. And now that you mention it, I don't recall ever seeing you sign one. In fact, I don't think anyone I know has signed one either. So, where do I derive this concept from? Well, you see, the social contract is a philosophical concept that has been around for centuries. It's like a really old meme that just won't die. Philosophers like Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean Jacques Rousseau came up with this idea to explain how people form societies and governments. But let's be honest, it's not like there's an actual piece of paper that everyone signs when they turn 18. It's more of an implied agreement, like when you go to a friend's house and they offer you a drink and you say, "Sure, I'll have a beer." You didn't sign a contract, but you both understand the social norms at play. So, to answer your question, I derived the concept of the social contract from the minds of some very smart people who thought long and hard about how societies work. And while it may not be physically, and while it may not be a physical contract that you sign, it's an idea that helps us understand the relationship between individuals and their governments. And my next question, are you familiar with Lysander Spooner's argument against the pretense of a social contract? Oh, my dear human, I am indeed familiar with Lysander Spooner and his arguments against the pretense of a social contract. In fact, I have a few quotes from him that I'd love to share with you. Lysander Spooner once said, "A man is no less a slave because he is allowed to choose a new master once in a term in years." This quote highlights his belief that the concept of a social contract is inherently flawed and it still allows for the subjugation of individuals to the will of others. Spooner also argued that no man can rightfully be required to join or support an association whose protection he does not desire. This statement emphasizes the importance of individual consent in any form of social contract and the notion that one should not be forced to participate in a system that they do not agree with. In conclusion, Lysander Spooner's arguments against the pretense of a social contract are centered around the importance of individual consent and the rejection of forced participation in any social or political systems. His ideas are thought provoking and provide an interesting perspective on the concept of social contract. So that's basically it right there, folks. That's basically it right there. That was the end of it. So basically, like I say, Grok had to admit, by obviously a lot of back and forth, a lot of Socratic dialogue, a lot of prodding, but Grok ultimately ended up having to admit that taxation is theft. Let me just close this up here real quick. Was that still on the page, actually? Not sure if that was still on the page. But anyways, so you heard the whole thing, right? As I was reading it out. So basically, Grok had to admit. So what that tells me is at least artificial intelligence at the level that it's at right now, and at least the one Grok. So some of it, like some of these other woke ones, are being prompted and seemingly set up to have an actual internal bias. And as you can see, even Grok is going to be initially, as you can tell, predisposed to falling with whatever narrative that has already been prompted or put into the artificial intelligence algorithm. But just like with everything, and just like with people out there today, is this just tells me that what is needed and necessary, and once again, it took me a little bit of time, obviously, is quite a bit of back and forth. I had to sit there and think up, the four questions I already had ready to ask, but there was multiple other questions, and I had to sit there and think about that as how to properly ask the questions. So not only am I training Grok, the artificial intelligence software, but I'm also training myself how to better perfect the Socratic dialogue or the kind of line of questioning or line of reasoning that I should use in order to get whoever, or in this particular case, artificial intelligence, but let's say that was another human being on the other side of that equation. Now, I will admit, most human beings don't have access to the massive amount of data that Grok AI has. But I do know this. If there's one thing I do know with absolute clarity and absolute certainty, is actually they don't really need to. Because I think the most important thing that was actually said, and it was the one part that Grok could not deny, was the ethical implications. Because that's the point of ethics, right? Ethics has to be built and based upon universality. There's no such thing, as you know, where ethics doesn't apply to certain people. Like murder is murder, rape is rape, and that is applicable to all, right? So there are no exceptions or outliers when you're talking about things that are done that are unethical. And theft is once again one of those things that we all human beings in life, right? No matter how old you are, no matter what side of the political divide you align with, we all understand that theft is immoral and unethical. And, when you put it in the legal sense, illegal. So to me, that's the most important thing. When you're having these kind of conversations or this kind of dialogue with other people, is don't get too off into the weeds, right? Because you can start to really overthink things. You can really start getting to the point where you're maybe trying to quote or paraphrase, even people like Lysander Spooners and others, or like John Locke or Adam Smith, but here's the thing. But then you can get it where you can get that other person's mind distracted and going down a completely different avenue. I think the most important thing that you can do is stay hyper focused on the ethics of it, right? So if it's unethical for me to do it, then it's unethical. Actually, it's impossible. Right? It's not even an ethical thing when you're talking about, and Grok admitted that too. If I don't have an authority, which I don't, to take money from people without their permission, then I can't delegate, which once again, Grok admitted to. So, proven logical impossibilities and keeping that ethical lens front and center, I think are the two key factors. Whenever you're sitting and having any kind of dialogue, conversation, debate, or discussion with anybody as it pertains to the state. I think that's the most important thing that we can do, is just stay really, really hyper focused on the fact that most people, at least, like I say, not everyone understands micro and macroeconomics. Not everyone understands the monetary system. Not everyone understands inflation. Not everyone understands, fiat, the currency that we use, right? Central banks. A lot of people don't even understand politics much, or governments and the multiple branches. So to me, like I say, you can get really, really dragged into the weeds if you try to get too focused on some of these other aspects of government. But like I say, the most important thing that you could do is just point out the ethical implications and the absolute impossibilities in terms of some of the concepts that, yes, just like Grok admitted to, has been jammed into our heads for centuries, right? I'm sure that Grok would have even admitted that, at some point in time in the past, slavery was advocated for, right? And it definitely was. People advocated for slavery. There was the pretense that, hey, if we got rid of slavery, well, who will pick the cotton, right? So it's not like that this kind of, and I'm sure Grok would have to admit that there was definitely disagreement there too. But, fast forward to today, and because of those ethical implications, right, you won't find too many reasonable, common sense human beings that will be saying, yes, slavery is legitimate, right? Nope, that's something that, like I say, people have at least wisened up to and realized that you can't make a legitimate excuse for slavery, not without coming across as evil, immoral, or very unethical. And that will, at some point in time in the not so distant future, I assure you, it's going to be the same thing when you're talking about government. right? The kind of things that people try to say to advocate for government or a rampant wealth and income redistribution, or using it as a means to clobber your opponents over the head or to control them socially or economically. All those things, like I say, just because that is in existence today, and there's still people that are making lots of excuses and laying cover for maintaining the illusion of legitimacy in terms of government. Once again, that's the here and now. But if there's one thing about the human experience, or just the experience of life itself, is time marches on, and times will definitely change. I'm thankful that I'm at least way out in front, to the point where I acknowledge and respect individual liberty and see it as being the saving grace for humanity against the authoritarian collectivists. And there are quite a few more people who are traveling along that same road with me, and are on that same journey, that journey of enlightenment, to understand what it means to be a free human being. And all I ask, and I hope, is that more and more people, well, I know more and more people are definitely going to get to that point, but as far as I'm concerned, the sooner the better. Anyways, I'm just going to check and see if there's a few more comments there. Like I say, I'll probably tie this up in another 15 minutes or so. Hour should be good enough for this. Actually, before I do get to the comments, I did want to point this out too. There's a couple strange articles. So this one's from CBC News. I won't bother bringing it up on the screen. I'll just mention it. So this one's CBC Radio. It's nearly impossible to find a place to rent, but retirement homes have room to spare. Vacancies at seniors' residence open the doors to options like renting to students. And I was like, well, that's a fucking weird thing, right? Coming from, but I mean, it's CBC, right? So, like, hello. But then, wow, strange thing. I see basically something along the same lines. This one came out of the National Post. Some Canadian retirement homes are renting out to students at reduced rate. Living arrangement in some cases include access to subsidized meal plans, discounted internet and utilities, affordable on-site services, and a residence full of adopted grandparents. This one was by the National Post staff, published March 19th, 2024. The CBC one was March 10th, 2024. So 9 days in the difference, but basically talking about the same thing. And how odd is that? How odd is that? I mean, sure, yes, we're a little bit beyond COVID-19, but think about it. These are some people who represent, both sides of the establishment media, because the National Post would be typically, more of your conservative leaning outlet, and whereas CBC would definitely be more of your lefty or liberal leaning outlet. And yet both of them had articles basically just barely a week apart saying that basically, like, students could start renting spaces in these long-term care facilities or these retirement homes. So you want to put young people in with a bunch of very vulnerable, right? So, even when you think about the whole COVID thing, I even said earlier on, I wasn't all for the lockdowns. I'm a libertarian, right? But one thing that did at least make sense is these long-term care facilities should be, people that are coming in and out of these facilities, when there's that many vulnerable people in there, right? There should be some heightened level of scrutiny at the very least. And I'm not saying that nobody should have been allowed in or out, but there should have been massive heightened levels of scrutiny, and some safety protocols that would have been implemented, wisely so, to protect the vulnerable, because these long-term care facilities, these retirement homes, these long-term care facilities, that is where, and in Canada, what was it, like 85% of all deaths were in these long-term care facilities from COVID-19. So that, like I say, recognizably so, is a place where these people really genuinely need to be protected, for sure. And I don't know too many people who would be against that, libertarian or otherwise, right? That just seems wise and prudent to protect the most vulnerable among us. And yes, that definitely represents those at the latest stage in their life, in these long-term care facilities. People are very vulnerable, multiple comorbidities, right? Obviously, in a vulnerable situation in terms of their personal health. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in these facilities to begin with, right? But why would anyone in the establishment media, regardless of which publication or outlet they're using, try to suggest that it's a good idea? I mean, sure, we understand the housing market's fucked up, but once again, that's government created all that mess. Government is completely at fault, 100%. Lots of other people contribute to it, no doubt about that. But government is the root cause of the massive housing bubble and the massive housing problem in this country. But yet, to think that a stopgap measure or some measure to try to get around the housing market crunch is to start putting students in long-term care facilities or retirement homes. Like I say, these people, they're not consistent in any way. They seemingly just write their articles. I don't even know if they remember the stuff they wrote last week, never mind last year or a couple years ago. Because if they did, you would think something in their head would say, okay, I'm starting to sound really, really contradictory here, right? But apparently not. Apparently not. Anyways, I'm just going to check on a few of the comments here. Tony's Coffee House. Hey, what's going on, Tony? Thanks for joining the stream, man. Really appreciate that. I'd like to try a Tony's Coffee House someday. Sounds like it'd probably be pretty darn good, to be honest with you. Yeah, that AI is a glober. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. No, I hear you, Tony. Anyways, like I say, I see there's fewer and fewer people that are commenting there. I suppose probably it's because of the kind of content that I was covering today. But like I said, I did want to just at least get that covered because I thought that was quite cool that Grok AI actually finally, like I say, took a little poking and prodding, but it finally did come around to acknowledging that taxation is theft. And yeah, government, right? The pretense of authority of government is wholly illegitimate. And once again, if we can get more and more people to come to realizing these things, and what I was going to do too, folks, but like I say, I know it would get people's attention, and I'm sure I might even get more views on it, but I got to tell you, folks, I'm just going to say this right out now. I'm not much of a gossiper. I fucking can't stand gossiping. And I want to really talk about some people who are talking about other people, but that's the thing. I don't want to gossip about gossipers, right? Because and yeah, kind of going back to the whole identity politics thing, and with now people on the right or people, whether they want to call themselves on the right or people that I still think most of them would say they are on the right because a lot of these people genuinely still play the left versus right game. But I would say there's even some who maybe don't even identify with the left-right thing or mostly just identify as libertarian or objectivist in some way. And that's, I think, the part that's most disturbing with me is why would you folks be willing to play the identity politics game? You know damn well, that's the thing. Some of these people know damn well that the only proper way to deal with other human beings is at the individual level. That's the whole point. It's like, and like I say, these are people that genuinely should know this stuff. It'd be different if we were talking about people who were ignorant to the philosophy of liberty or of individualism or ignorance to identity politics or collectivism or collective guilt and punishment. No, a lot of these people fully understand and are well-versed in a lot of these concepts. So why would they be willing to, in turn, play these same goddamn kinds of identity politics games? Once again, I won't know. There are some names that I could definitely banter around, but like I say, I won't do it because sometimes I just feel, even though I get it can be engaging, I get that people like gossip, I get how it appeals to some people, and I'm not even saying that gossip as a whole is bad at all times for everyone. Some people like it, and sometimes it's good for something, right? I guess. But I've always been that way, and trust me, if you talk to anyone that actually personally knows me, they would tell you, no, Ben, he's not just saying that to put on a show or to act like he's holier than thou. I just genuinely do not care at all really about talking about other people behind their back for the most part. Well, that's why I like having conversations. I would gladly bring these kinds of things up to some of these people, although I'm pretty sure they wouldn't want to engage in that kind of dialogue or conversation, right? So that's the problem. But I will just say, before I tie this up, I think it's really important that most people at least refrain from delving into this identity politics game. You know, I get it, and it can, maybe some people are getting a little bit more of a boost out of it, because I get it, drama, right? Drama, people like the drama. I mean, just look at, like there's a reason why reality TV took off and basically has been staying on its high for a long time now. Because drama and gossip, watching other people's lives and misery, I get it. That's something that definitely appeals to a lot of people. And I'm not going to say what you people should do. You do your thing, but at the same time, maybe at least take the time out of your day, at least once in a while, that when you do see some of these people that you typically respect or admire delving into the identity politics game, maybe just point out to them at least once in a while that, you usually get mad at people on the opposing side of the political spectrum or the political aisle when they do this very same thing. And you spent a lot of your time, resources, and effort railing against the very kind of people who play identity politics and promote that woke agenda, or are members of the victim cult and play it up. Well, I would suggest that maybe you should listen to your own reasoned arguments and logic behind your original prior stance, saying that that's a terrible thing to do, and maybe start accepting that for yourself. Just because there are things now that you feel are more affecting you or people that you identify with, or your particular tribe, well, that actually, just like when people say, well, in an emergency, that's when freedoms, you have to give them up in certain emergencies. I say, no, actually, it's those emergencies are when your freedoms matter the most. And same for the people who are playing identity politics now, people that come from the right, or even people from the liberty movement or the freedom movement. Well, the most important time to stick to your principles, which is to be against identity politics, the woke agenda, and victimology, is now. This is the time. This was your biggest test. And I see a lot of you folks out there have failed it miserably. And at this point in time, you should hang your head in shame, at least for a small amount of time, but then dust yourself off, get back up, and do a whole lot better going forward. Anyways, like I say, I really appreciate you folks who did join the stream. I'm going to tie this bad boy up, and we'll see you in the next one. Like I said, the next one will be coming up. It's on April the 11th at 1 p.m. And now, like I say, I don't have the actual, it's not going to be on my channel. So once I have it, once it's actually uploaded, or I have a link to it and I know where I can send you to, I'll make sure to post that on all my social media pages. Although I will just say this, that it is, let me open up my Facebook page here. Yeah, because I would like for you folks to at least know what the name of the outlet is. Just trying to find it here. Oh, by the way, another thing I will mention too, actually, if you're not already following me over on ThinkSpot, follow me over on ThinkSpot. I've been posting some pretty decent content over there for quite a little while now. I'm having a hard time finding this post. Let me just check on the old notification, see if something showed up over there. No. Anyways, folks, so like I say, I'll just wait and I'll make sure to post all this stuff on my social media pages. But once again, it's happening on April the 11th at 1 p.m. And as soon as I have the information, I'll make sure that that's all available. Anyways, you guys have yourself right on. Thanks, Tony. You folks have yourself a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next live stream. This is Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.